Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jason Kwame Apieto, a software engineer based in Ghana. Thank you so much for all those who liked my previous video, and to all those who subscribed, thank you very much. If you are new here, welcome. So today I'm going to talk about the programming languages I started with and some advice for new developers. From my first video, I mentioned that I started with HTML and CSS, or HTML first, then move to CSS. I personally feel if you are starting out, doing something that's simple and gives you instant gratification, like for instance the HTML, if you put in a simple P tag on H tag, you will see something on your screen. The only thing you need is a text editor in a browser, and that's it. You can do HTML and CSS. Interestingly enough, as I progressed and I was watching more senior developers speak and stuff, they also advise on starting with something like this where you can see your results instantly. I personally didn't have a plan when I started. I just started with the HTML and CSS because a friend was learning it basically. Also, HTML is simple to understand, it's easy to learn. CSS, the beginning part is quite simple to learn. I mean, they are advanced part of the language, but basically they are simple and easy to learn for new developers. And also, every website has HTML and CSS. Every website has HTML and CSS. No matter how high level they make it, whether it's drag and drop, whether it's voice generated, anything, it all boils down to HTML and CSS. So if you are learning this, you know that at least it's something that's practical. It's not just a waste of time. And as I mentioned, I skipped JavaScript. The next language I learned was Python. I think I mentioned this in my previous video as well, that I wanted something more dynamic basically. Python is a very versatile language that can do almost everything. At the time when I was searching for languages to learn, Python was one of the top 3 most popular languages. So that was also what influenced me to learn Python. Another thing is also its syntax. I mean, Python is quite simple. You don't need any semicolons or unnecessary brackets. So I think to me it was simpler. With Python, my instance, I used it to build a calculator for the console. But Python can be used for web development with Django and Flask. It can be used for machine learning and AI with TensorFlow and PyTorch. It can be used for IoT with MicroPython. It can also be used for game development using PyCura and Panda 3D, and many more stuff. I mean, Python is very, very versatile. As I mentioned in my previous video, I started learning it with tutorials, and how I learned it was going with the tutorial step by step, code by code. So I did a very popular Hello World, then I moved to building a calculator from a particular tutorial. I can't really remember the tutorial I used, but it was a particular tutorial that was teaching how to build a simple calculator with Python to work in the terminal. And as I mentioned, that had to do with just addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Then I added modular arithmetic and exponential. So this is something I also want to advise the new developers on. As you go through your tutorials and learning everything, as in following the tutorial step by step and code by code, don't just follow the tutorial like that, but try to understand why something is happening. If the person in the video is not explaining everything into detail, you can Google it, or you can search another video to explain something and come back to the previous video. It's okay to, in the beginning, follow code by code, but as you are going, you have to understand why something worked, why something didn't work, so that you can progress as a developer. So I did the same thing here with the HTML and CSS. I built some basic stuff with the HTML and CSS. I didn't just learn it and just put it down, but I actually used it to do something on my own so that it would be with me. So I don't always have to go back to a tutorial to do something, but I would rather understand how the things are being used, and I can go straight to documentation. In my first year of university, the language I was introduced to first was VB, Visual Basic. This is a language which is quite similar to JavaScript in terms of syntax. It's primarily used to build programs for the Windows operating system. It's not too difficult, but it's okay. And in all honesty, I left the language on the paper after writing my exams. I learned it purposely for exams.
Bruh.
I didn't drop the concepts that I learned from it. I mean, if you ask me to write VB right now, I'll have to go to the documentation and write something. But I don't have the syntax as in chewed in my head. but I have the processes like how loops work, how basic stuff in the language work, and I looked at the similarities between Python and VB. So after I learned VB for academic purposes, it got me to appreciate that skills are transferable between programming languages. During that same year, I also got introduced to PHP. At the time when I did my research, I saw that PHP was more of the web than Python. So in my head, I learned the Python to understand programming basics. Then I was using the PHP for more web stuff, more web development, as in server-side development. Just like how I learned for the Python, I started learning it with tutorials, following step by step, going through the tutorials and building simple service here and there. But before this, I was only building front-end stuff that show up in the browser. So doing this server-side stuff opened like a whole new world to me, and it was interesting. Like, it was a bit intimidating at first, but it was interesting. And I almost felt like I was the next Gates or Zuckerberg that would drop out of school and do some crazy stuff. I mean, it can still happen. So after my first year, I mentioned in my previous video that I got an internship at Next Infotech Limited, and there I got more into PHP framework, which is Laravel, and I used it to build a simple movie application. Then back on campus, I think that would be the second year if I'm not mistaken, either second or third. That's when this happened. Most likely second. So my campus ministry, I'm a Baptist, so my campus ministry was NUBS, National Union of Baptist Students in UCC, was doing a Bible drive where they wanted more of us to study the Bible on a daily basis. So the president at the time wanted something like a quiz, so that at the end of the day we test our knowledge and he would reward the winner of that day. I don't remember if he asked me or I suggested, but I built a quiz application for us. So I used my knowledge of HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap to build the front-end interface, and I used PHP I think I used raw PHP then. I didn't use Laravel. I think at that time I wasn't really still into the Laravel like that. So I used raw PHP to build the service with MySQL, and I hosted everything on Heroku. At the time, Heroku was free, but right now. So the way the application worked was I had two users basically. So the first user is everyone else in the campus ministry, and the second user was the admin. So when anyone who is not the admin goes onto the application, they had a particular URL though. When they go onto the application, they have to fill in a text field with their full name. Then after doing so, they get into the application and they have their questions there, and they have, I don't think it was timed. No, we didn't time it. So they had the questions there, but they could only do it once, and I was using their full names for verification or to validate if the person has done it already. After they've completed everything and they click submit, the system will show them their score and showing them where they had wrong and the right answers basically. I mean, I did a lot of googling and stuff, but it worked and it was really nice to see. On the admin side, the president would log in. I gave him a particular set of credentials that I seeded into the database. When he logs in, he will see a table with the leaderboard. So when everyone is done, I think we ended it at 7. So at 7, I'd stopped the server on Heroku and no one could access the application, and the president will announce the winner from the leaderboard that he had. At the time, I didn't know about database seeding and all that stuff. So when the Bible study president sent me the questions, I would literally open up my MySQL interface and the questions side by side and copy paste each question into the row of the MySQL database. I mean, it wasn't efficient, but it worked. So I won't do that right now. So from an audited course, I learned the next language, which is C++. The course was Embedded Systems, which is a computer science audited course. So in there I learned C++. So they taught us this so that we could use to program microcontrollers. And I was also introduced to MicroPython. I mean, I knew Python, but MicroPython has a set of libraries that are a bit different from regular Python, but it's still basically the same syntax. Now, after school, I did my NSS on campus as a teaching assistant. And at the time, we were being paid $559. I know, right? the money honestly wasn't enough, so I wanted to find online Ghanaian gigs that I could use PHP Laravel to do so that I could get money. I mean, I've done something for a university hall and got paid for it, so I was thinking that I'm ready to go into the workforce with that. So I mostly searched on LinkedIn. I was searching other job boards, but I mostly searched on LinkedIn. And I kid you not, at the time when I was searching, the PHP Laravel jobs were very few. Like almost 5 to 10% of every job that I saw. And majority was either Node.js, Java, C++, or Python with Django and Flask. I knew Python, but I didn't know it in terms of web development. And I was feeling a bit reluctant to now go and learn something to come and apply and all those stuff. Later on, because I realized that the Node.js and stuff was kind of a lot, so I ended up going back to JavaScript and learned it. Then after that, I also learned Node.js and also added TypeScript to it. So this is the order in which I learned the languages as I was starting. You don't have to go this route. I mean, you can have any language as your first language. A friend of mine started with C, another friend started with Java, another one started with PHP. I mean, you can learn any language as your first language, but I will recommend that you pick just one language, then understand the programming concepts, loops, variables, constants, operators. Just understand those basics in one language. Then you realize that you can transfer that to other languages. The only difference is syntax and a little nuances here and there. But learn one language first. Pick any of the ones, the popular ones. You can, any of them is fine. And start with that one. Start with any language that fancies you or that looks simple to you. Start with that. Understand it. I don't want to say master it, but understand it very well, especially the concept in there. Then when you want to go into a different realm, you can easily learn or pick up whatever is used in that realm. Also remember, you don't have to rush. Take your time and understand something. Don't just try and chase the new technologies. Take your time and understand something before moving on to the next thing. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching and sticking through to the end. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you have any question, please ask it in the comment section below. I'll make sure to respond. Thank you very much once again, and see you in the next one.